What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Thursday, February 29th, Leap Day. A special pod for that because that doesn't happen very often, Troy. I am your host, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, back from his vacation to Arizona, as well as his brief foray with All-Star Weekend. Sergey. Troy, how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. Great to be back in
Good to have you back.
cold Indiana after a long 8-day trip in warm Arizona. Certainly feels good to be back in the home, watching some good hoops tonight. Pacers are on national TV. That'll be good watch. But Pistons, they won last night as of we're recording. We're happy
The
about that.
Pistons have won a basketball game.
They won. That makes
Put it
9.
on the
That makes 9
billboard.
on the year. Yeah. But I'm doing good. And Sean, I told you a little bit beforehand, NBA All-Star game, All-Star weekend was so fun. I did the celebrity game and I did the All-Star practice. And then I did the NBA crossover, which is essentially an NBA convention at our big convention center.
Now,
super fun.
Now, we've talked quite a bit about, we've talked a bit about the practice. That seemed like a really cool experience. The crossover event, which is the convention that you got to go to. You got to meet guys like Walker Kessler, which is super cool. The one thing we have not talked about, and my morbid curiosity needs to ask, Troy, how was the All-Star Celebrity Game? Break down that experience for me.
Yeah. So originally, I'll break this down for when I first got the tickets, when I realized how cheap they were. Originally, how Lucas Oil Stadium is a football stadium. It's where the Indianapolis Colts play. It is meant for football, not celebrity NBA basketball. So when I bought the tickets, I thought the court was going to be horizontal, like a football field, right? You have end zone here, you have end zone there. So I was like, hey, these are decent seats. Instead, they put the basketball court vertically like this. So instead of being at the half court line at center court, I was actually behind a basket. So I was a little bit disappointed with that. But at the same time, got to see Stephen A. Smith coach the team. Lil Wayne was the assistant coach. So just seeing those celebrities was cool.
What do you think? What do you think Lil Wayne's contributions to the overall scheme was?
I would say very minimal, Sean. Very minimal. But my wife is an Ohio State fan, so CJ Stroud, seeing him, of course, Rookie of the Year for the NFL.
You'll
had
get
a good game.
You'll get to tell people you got to see CJ Stroud play, and then you just got to hope that they don't ask you what sport you got to see him play.
Right. And then the MVP, I mean, I'm a football guy, but I'm an NFC North kind of guy, so I'm not too familiar with the Cowboys roster besides Dak Prescott, but the MVP was one of the Cowboys guys. So that was fun, I guess. And then there's an Olympic high jumper that played. He could dunk when he was like 5'11", so that was kind of cool.
That's sick.
Yeah, but no, the quality of basketball, Sean, was what I paid for. So.
I was gonna say, Kai Cenat was in it as well. I saw he threw a fit. Got his
but some
time.
WNBA players. I mean, Asia Wilson was one of the coaches. Jewel Lloyd played. I'm a big Jewel Lloyd fan.
Oh, that's cool.
So you had some of the best WNBA, but you had WNBA All-Stars playing. So that was pretty cool to see. But yes, still somewhat lower quality, even though you had high caliber athletes. You definitely did not have. Go ahead.
Was there a part of you that wish you went to the Rising Stars Challenge instead? I know that was a little bit more, but it didn't sound like it was super expensive.
Yeah, part of me did. My wife even gave me the option of, do we leave at the end of the third quarter and get tickets and walk over? Because they overlapped. I decided not to, but of course part of me did, especially when I saw the Jaden Ivey, Benedict Mathurin chirping going on. But I was able to go home and watch it on TV. It was good. But part of me as the basketball fan, knowing, Chat had a good game as well, knowing that there was some good quality NBA basketball. Our Pistons, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, we had to walk by the stadium to get back to our car. So walking back was kind of torture, knowing what was going on in that building. and just having to walk past it, pretending that you don't know what's going on in that building.
Yep.
That was kind of torture.
Yep.
I'll have to admit.
You see, I told you once you told me about the All-Star Celebrity Game, I said, I think you're gonna regret this, Troy. and here we are. You're like, yeah, it was torture. I'm like, I told you.
Yeah.
But hey, it's still a fun event. And I mean, like you said, it's just like, like a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to go to those types of things. Granted, we could talk about the politics of how, these arena, how these all-star games, get allocated, because you look at, where these, where they've been hosted, and a lot of them are like where the cities where there's been, like government funding or, like city funding going into like the stadiums and into like those types of projects. So, obviously that's a side of the business that we don't know about, but hey, when you're in that type of market, because I know people are like, why isn't it just in LA or Las Vegas or New York? Like, why isn't it in the big markets? Well, I mean, this is a cool opportunity for fans like you and me and people that are from the Midwest to have that type of thing. So absolutely love to see it. Wish they would have brought a better overall product to Indianapolis, but I think at this point it doesn't deserve the amount of energy that people have given it, because I think it deserves the amount of energy that the players put into it. Right. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah, that's a good intake.
So, but Troy, you alluded to it. The Pistons have been playing some competitive spirited basketball of late. There's been actually quite a bit of controversy that could have potentially prevented them from 2 more wins on top of the one they got against Chicago. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how incredible Cade Cunningham has been since the All-Star break, but really just this season in particular, because people really haven't noticed how awesome Cade's been. But also, just want to talk more just about, post All-Star break, how teams are looking, storylines we're intrigued about, going to the rest of the season, teams we're enjoying watching, that and more. But first, this is From Half Court. For each and every week, we sit down and talk all things Detroit basketball, NBA basketball, wherever there's basketball being played, we want to talk about it. Even if it's a ton of grandmas in Rucker Park, throwing down some Capri Suns and doing some Dr. J hook shots. We'll be there. But first, be sure you like this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell with the passion that it deserves, so you don't miss any of the content and any of the podcasts when they go live. But also, be sure you follow my guys on social media. You can follow myself on X at Sean Half Court. You can follow Troy on X at Troy Sergey 44. And you can also check out our guy Jeff Iafrady at Crunch Time with Jeff and Booner on his YouTube channel, as well as Jeff Iafrady on
X.
Very good, Troy. I'm proud. But Troy, enough of the housekeeping. Let's get into the ball of basket, specifically the quality that's been played by Detroit of late. Now, obviously, it hasn't been perfect. This is still a 9-win basketball team. So we are not coming on here talking about this group turning their season around, or this season no longer, being an atrocity. Like this season is what it is. I think we have all agreed at this point, once you get to a 28-game losing streak, that defines your season. However, I think, as we've talked about before, the reason why there is hope, the reason why there is optimism, the reason why it's not hopeless like it would have been if this happened with like the Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond years, is because there is the potential of guys like Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren to take leaps and, to develop into a star type player. And it feels like, albeit only a 4-game sample size, over the last few games, it feels like not only are we seeing like a healthy Cade Cunningham and a comfortable Cade Cunningham, it feels like we're watching Cade Cunningham begin to transcend to that next level of looking like a star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Did you want me to go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's helping us win, right? At least last night it did. as of we're recording, and it's helping us stay competitive, which was really something that we were hoping for all season long, especially when we had the long losing streak, because we wanted to see competitive basketball. And even if we're not getting the win at the end of the day, we know Paolo Banchero's travel and bucket. We know the disaster as it was at Madison Square Garden the other day. Those are games that easily, with a half a second going a different way, you win those games. So what I'm trying to say with that is Cade is putting this team in a position where they can play competitive basketball against high caliber NBA teams that we honestly struggled with all season long. Now, granted, we struggled with almost everyone all season long, but we won earlier this season against Chicago at home. That was a home opener. We were both there. And, even, Orlando Magic team, who's been playing great all season, having such a competitive game against them. We know what the New York Knicks are capable of doing. We watched their playoff run last year. Stay competitive with those teams. Cade Cunningham is kind of the answer there. He's putting up great, honestly, I'll say it, all-star numbers after the all-star weekend. And, of course, him not being selected. So he's making a difference, Sean. On this team, he's looking like the star that we've known him to be. Even this summer, we talked about the player that we're seeing now. Can Cade give you 25 plus on any given night? Yeah, yes. Can Cade play competitive defensive basketball? Yes. Can he go out and dish the ball easily 6-7 assists a night? Yes. Can he bring the turnover ratio down? We're slowly seeing that. He's added quite a few games, even the past month or two. That's been high volume and turnovers, but we've seen the consistency lately of him not turning the ball over. So Sean, he's playing the basketball that we wanted him to see. And the Pistons look like a better team with it, even if we don't have the shooters like a Bojan and a Burks who've been keeping us competitive all season anymore on our roster. Cade Cunningham is keeping this team in competitive basketball.
And it helps, like you said, when you lose those types of shooters. Part of the thing of the development of Cade is, can he consistently knock down that 3-point shot? And over at least since the All-Star break, that answer has been like a resounding yes, because over the last 4 games, albeit a 4-game sample size, but since returning from All-Star break, he is averaging 28.5 points, shooting 59% from the field, 57% from 3.
Yeah.
Which is insane. And on top of that, that's on 7 3-point attempts a game. So he's extremely efficient. He's getting you from all 3 levels of the court, but the crazy thing, he's doing all this averaging less than 4 free throw attempts a game. If the Pistons were actually on the right side of what those calls probably should have been, the Orlando one, I think, is debatable. I know the league came out and pretty much backed up the call at the time that it wasn't a travel. I think there's a case to be made that it was a travel, nonetheless debatable, right? The Knicks game, they had them dead to rights. And then Dante DiVincenzo came in and gave him a spear like he was Goldberg of the WWE. And the ref, who was standing right there, was just like, okay, that's fine.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of how I saw the scenario too, Sean.
And so that it's egregious when people are getting outraged about the Pistons being on the end of that, because normally when a Detroit team goes through something like that, it's like, well, it's Detroit, who cares? But it's like, no, this was like, they had the Knicks dead to rights in the Garden off of perhaps one of, if not Cade's best game overall performance of his career. And the thing is like, he's putting those types of performances now up on a regular basis. And the thing that I think is helping him a ton is, not only is he feeling more comfortable with the 3-point shot, but on the other side of the ball, he's getting guys that can help him and alleviate pressure, because even though he might not have the shooters that we used to have, Simone Fontecchio is pretty darn close thus far. And then you're also getting defenders like Fontecchio. In his limited sample size, Quentin Grimes has been stellar on that side of the court. And then the increased play and the improvement of Asar Thompson over the last few weeks, and Isaiah Stewart being back in the lineup. Compared to a month ago, Troy, compared to even the beginning of February before the trade deadline, this is a different team in that side of the floor. And as a result, like, not only is that why they're being competitive, that's why they won in Chicago.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if sad's the right word, but we're kind of focusing in on this Chicago game because I think it's everything that we were looking for this team to do. And the defensive end, and you mentioned a guy like Asar Thompson, having him on the court where he can hit that 3-point shot. He made that clutch one last night, but also play like high volume defense.
Yep.
Cade too. Cade played some great defense. Ivy, where we've talked about that being the weaker part of his game last season and even into this season as well. Having Chicago take off balance, tough shots in that fourth quarter, and be held to under 100 points because of actually good defense, not necessarily bad offense, just good, solid defense.
Well, they're also, in fairness, there was some pretty historically bad offense in the sense that the Bulls had the worst 3-point shooting percentage in 10 years.
Okay.
Were you aware of how bad the Bulls shot last night, Troy?
I guess I wasn't.
All right. So just to give you perspective, the Chicago Bulls they only made 2 threes the entire game. And I believe they were 2 of 23 as a team.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's 6.8%.
Yeah.
And
you have okay shooters on that team. You have Kobe White and DeRozan, and Vooch can hit it here and there. Wow, yeah, those are pretty bad numbers.
I think the word okay is exactly how you can just describe the Chicago Bulls as a whole, and they're just gonna be that way. Oh, my bad. It was 2 for 29.
Okay, so even worse.
6.9%.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
By the way, the only other worse games or performances, 8.3%. Houston in March of 2016, 8.9% by also the Rockets in February of 2021, and the Brooklyn Nets at 9.1% in April of 2017. I mean, you got to think, especially with like where the league is now with the volume of shooting that you're doing for a team in the modern NBA to miss that many, that's pretty bad. But also, you can attribute some of that to defense as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly alarming. But yes, I'm glad that we talked about the defensive end because we saw that in games that we have not seen that. We have not seen teams collapse in the fourth quarter. Even if it's their own doing, we still haven't seen that this season very often against our team. So to watch that unravel, yeah, feels pretty good.
Yeah, well, and on top of that, like the offensive talent on this team was never a question. We knew we had guys that can get buckets. And in the modern NBA, there are more players than ever who are getting 20+ point games. Like, more players are averaging 20 points than ever. We're getting more scoring than ever. So offense and getting a bucket wasn't necessarily a question. Monty said himself, Troy said himself, we are not the Detroit Pistons until we defend, until we establish our identity on that side of the court. And even though like the moves they made at the deadline are not only far from, being complete of what they're going to do, I would expect half of this current roster to be back this season, like this next season, like if that, like I would imagine there's going to be a decent amount of turnover. But on top of that, you think about the fact that this is a roster, it might not be a sexy roster, but it makes a lot more sense, especially for the team that they're trying to be. And could they perhaps have gotten more, for Bojan and Alec Burks last year? Yes. But the guy that they got now, Quentin Grimes, is a guy that fits their timeline really well. And he's not afraid of the big moment, man. Against his former team in the Garden in that fourth quarter, that stretch was exactly why the Pistons went and acquired him.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even that Orlando game, Sean, he hit some good shots too. And we knew what kind of player he was. He's a defensive guy.
Mhm.
And he played even in New York some good defensive stretches. And we're seeing that now here too. But Quentin Grimes too, seeing him score a little bit on the offensive end. I know that was just one game and we haven't really seen much of that in others, but I don't know. For the rest of the season, if he can hit that shot, or Cade can help him, Cade or Ivy can help him get open on the offensive end, or some, slash into the basket like we see Asar do all the time. That might be another area where we help. So,
Yep.
I'm a guy who wants to see both sides of the court, as we all do.
Yep.
But
Well,
especially with a guy like him,
and
who's
that's
a
always kind
defensive
of the
specialist.
story of those 3-and-D guys, right? Is
Exactly. The
how
3 and
they
D.
how they overall, perform on
And
that
all
side of the
30
court.
teams need a 3 and D, Sean.
Mhm. And I think one thing that's really, like inspiring, you brought up Asar, like making the big shot. Like Cade talked about after the game how much he works on that shot, how much he shoots in the gym. I have that anecdote just about how the guy just lives in the gym. But on top of that, like a lot of the times, the shots that he has made from beyond the arc this season have been the important shot, have been the consequential shot. A lot of the times when you see players struggle to shoot, it's an overall mental lapse. It's just something that, quite frankly, that they're just not fully capable, of doing. That's not the case with Asar.
Right.
It's just got to continue to work on that shot. And I mean, if he even gets it to 35%, Troy, we're in business.
Yeah, we are
That's
in
a guy.
business.
That's a guy that you can't leave alone
Right.
on the
Right.
three-point line. And then that overall just makes him a major threat because he's already great at the basket. He's already really damn good in the mid-range, an aspect of his game that goes underrated. He adds that element. All-star Asar is not far off.
And especially seeing how well Amen's playing as well too. We know their potential. We know that that they're athletic players who can get to the hole, that they can play on the defensive end, and like you mentioned, that mid-range part of Asar is something that I think goes underrated. So even to develop that more, and again, he's only a rookie. All these guys are so young that we're talking about. Ivy's in year 2. Sometimes I forget that. I think he's like in year 3 or 4.
Yeah, I
Ivy's
still have
in
to
year
remind
2.
myself with Jalen Duren that he's 20 years old.
Another guy, year 2. So yeah, as disappointing
Cade,
as the
only
season is,
22.
yeah, as disappointing as the season is, there's still things to to be excited about, and to, well, if you're Troy Weaver, really piece together in the offseason. So
There's reasons to still believe that they have the ability to take the next step. It's
yes,
ultimately how they turn around from the mistake that they did make,
yeah,
and how they fortify this roster going forward. And I mean, so far, with the players they got at the deadline, I'd say so far so good. And I mean,
mhm,
the player that's perhaps the most important guy they got at this deadline, kind of for their long-term fit, is Simone Fontecchio. Now, it's his second year in the league, but obviously he came from Italy. He played professionally in Italy. He actually since his so he shot 39% from beyond the arc from 3 on 2.5 attempts in Utah this season. In 7 games with the Pistons, 28 minutes a game, he's shooting about 6.5 attempts from 3 now. So his totals, like his volume's definitely gone up. Since joining the Pistons, Troy, not only has his volume gone up, his percentage has gone up as well. He's shooting 42% from 3 on almost 7 attempts a game. He's
yeah.
averaging 15 points. His effective field goal percentage is 60%, which is really good.
Yeah, yeah, and he's kind of just carrying that role from Bojan, I think, and Burks. I mean, we you need that guy on your team.
Yep.
It's ironic we traded Kevin Knox for him, right? We didn't trade Bojan for him, but
Kevin
he's
Knox in a second round pick that's kind of a like late first on the value, but it's in a not a great draft class. So
so Sean. We keeping him next year?
absolutely, I did. I think.
I
I
think
think
so
part
too.
of bringing him here was the intention to try and keep him long term in a form. But I think now, I think you just feel like and granted, 7-game sample size, like you still want to see how the rest of the season goes, but the way that, he's a restricted free agent this upcoming summer, so you're in the driver's seat to keep him. The only thing that you're going to have to worry about is teams going out and like, putting in an offer for him. And I'm sure there will be teams that will have interest in discussing with him, but I think ultimately Detroit's going to make it a priority to make sure that he stays, especially if he keeps shooting this well. And again, it's you don't expect him to be Bojan on the offensive side. Like Bojans are, that is a type of guy, like his efficiency is elite. His ability offensively is elite. But if you can have 80% of that offensively, but then a significantly better player on the defensive side of the ball, that fits this team a lot better.
Right, because that was the one area we criticized Bojan the most, is that he's a liability on the defensive end. Sure, he overcompensates on the offensive end. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Jeff, shout out to Jeff, say those exact words. But yeah,
there were a lot of nights he scored 20, gave up 30. Let's just say it.
That's a better way of putting it. But to like what you said, Sean, the high volume in the 3-point shooting and the ability to defend. To me, that moving forward with this roster, that's the guy you want on this team.
I mean, if Simone Fontecchio is your 6th man, you feel pretty good about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely you do.
So I definitely think that's definitely someone, I think a great find at the deadline. Again, the value that you got, essentially, Kevin Knox in a 2nd-round pick. And I mean, Kevin Knox even got waived from Utah. So pretty much a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah.
So yeah, great move from Troy Weaver in that sense. Doesn't absolve, the mistakes and the things that have led to, where they're at now, but definitely going in a right direction in that sense. And I mean, look, like you said, the New York game, that call was overall an atrocity. For them to have that win and to have that spirited defensive performance on a back-to-back off of that emotional game is a pretty significant, win. And I think if we do see this team take the next steps next year, and we do see this, team like turn it around, so to speak, I think you could potentially look at this Knicks game as like a catalyst for like that change. It could be a momentum swing for this rebuild. Not saying it definitively is, but a lot of times whenever that stuff happens, it's events like this that are the catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, other teams looking to how they've gotten some of their catalysts that's put them into contenders. It's a unique trade sometimes, a gamble trade sometimes, but when you find someone's talent through putting players that have talent, right, your core around them, that's when you can figure out some of the long-term guys you'd want on your team.
Yep. Now, Troy, to move on from the Pistons, not entirely, but to kind of discuss, a little bit the Pistons, a little bit rest of the league. The Washington Wizards are now on a 12-game losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the winning that the Pistons have done over the last few weeks, they are actually now tied in the standings. The Pistons are no longer the sole worst team in the league.
That's right.
And because of that, it really brings to mind this tweet from Kyle Kuzma back at the end of December where he said, at this point, it's like, don't be that team.
Yeah.
Well, now in the midst of a 12-game losing streak, Jordan Poole losing his job as a starter in Washington, Troy, they are now officially that team.
Yeah. We beat them. We beat them twice this year or just once?
Only once because
once.
they beat us at home.
Yeah.
Part of that bad losing streak. I was there for that one.
Right. With that, Sean, yeah, they are that team. And wouldn't it be awesome just to finish the season with the 14th best record in the East? Wouldn't that just make you feel good?
I mean, listen. There's no moral victories when you're in this position in this league. But
but that one would be.
It would be nice to not be the worst team in the league the same year you have the worst losing streak in the history of the
Yeah,
league,
right.
almost in the history of professional sports.
That's a great way of putting it, Sean. And yeah, you're right. Like moral victories when you're this bad, they actually don't mean anything.
Mhm.
But a moral victory in this sense, where it's almost ironic because you have played this bad, but to still not be the worst team, there's some fun as a Pistons fan that you
It's
can
like
hang your
it
hat on.
doesn't mean anything, but simultaneously it's not nothing.
You said it better than I could. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's like that weird gray area of, hey, we're not celebrating it, but okay. Like that's about how I would put it.
Yep.
But moving on, as we go down the stretch, as we look at, teams that are, kind of surging, how things are kind of shaping throughout the rest of the league. Troy, are there teams that, you've been watching, teams that you've been, seeing? Are there teams that have been, kind of standing out and spark your interest? Maybe any potential dark horses coming into March, April, and May?
Yeah, a little bit. Obviously, I can't not say the Pacers, just because Tyrese Halliburton looks to be back still. I think adjusting. He's never been fully the same yet since his little injury back in January, but he looks to be good, dishing out, scoring at the rate that he is. Pascal Siakam, again, that addition has been working out pretty decent so far. Benedict Mathurin, even over the past week, has been playing high quality basketball. So yeah, I just can't not say them. But looking at the rest of the league,
I think my dark horse team has got to be Cleveland as of right
yeah,
now.
I was going to say the team that beat them last year, just because Jalen Brunson has been playing awesome basketball. I
Yes.
don't think you could ever count out New York. On the Western side, that 8, 9, 10 is also clustered, and they're all like teams who are supposed to be good, right? Like Phoenix and the Lakers. So I don't really know if those can be dark horses, but you can't ever count out a Kevin Durant in the playoffs, right? So
It's another team that's surging. The Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah. They had they're on a 2-game losing streak of close games. They lost to the Pacers on Sunday, and then of course Cleveland last night with Max Strus's 3-quarter court shot. But
before that, they were on a 7-game winning streak.
Right. So, but Luka is playing out of this universe.
Yep. Luka's been incredible, and I think that's been like the known commodity of Dallas. We knew he was going to be awesome. The things that I don't think were anticipated was the fact that Luka's actually trying on defense now. He's not great, but he is no longer a overly liable defender.
Right.
So that helps. Kyrie has actually just been basketball Kyrie this year. Like,
yeah. What?
I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm knocking on all the wood that I have near me. But it's just been basketball with Kyrie this year.
Yeah, he seemed focused too. He does seem focused.
Which when you have Kyrie focused, that's one of the best guards in the league still to this day. On top of that, you have the acquisitions of Daniel Gafford. And Troy, for my money, Daniel Gafford might be one of the most underrated big men in the league. Like his rim protection ability, his presence as a lob threat is only elevated when you play with Luka. And so I'm really high on him. But then you get PJ Washington.
I was just going to say, I'll tell you an awesome, underrated player on his own team, PJ Washington. Even right now, they're playing the Raptors, and he's starting off really hot. So, another one.
People focus on his offense. The fact that you have a reliable wing defender, Troy, alongside Luka, a guy who can legitimately guard the number one on another team's best team. If I am the Minnesota Timberwolves, I am terrified if I draw the Mavericks round one. If I am the Oklahoma City Thunder, I am terrified. If I'm the Nuggets, I'm terrified. If I'm the Clippers, I'm my pants because of the history you have with Luka in the playoffs.
Right. Dude, Luka versus the core of James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. One of those teams is getting out in the first round. I don't think it's Luka's team.
I mean, Troy, there's a legitimate case to be made. Minnesota's the number 1 team in the Western Conference. Are you confident that Minnesota, Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, and those guys, if granted, if they keep on this momentum,
yeah,
and Luka's healthy and playing at the level that we know he can, are we sure Minnesota's winning all 4 games? Like, are we sure they're winning 4 out of 7?
To say that roster in February post trade deadline is built for the playoffs.
Credit to Dallas, by the way, for
absolutely
for taking a really crappy situation and now being in a legitimate case where you could actually say Luka might have a decent enough roster to make noise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just get Luka to the conference finals, at that point, man,
right,
all bets are off.
Right.
At that point, you're going to have the best star in whatever series you're in.
Right. And that's so exciting for me as a Luka fan because he's the guy that you've been rooting for. At least I've been rooting for since draft day. I mean, coming to the league, you knew he had talent. You saw the talent right away. You've seen the shortcomings of the Dallas Mavericks for years, even before him. I mean, my goodness, the fact that Dirk only walked away with 1 championship still makes me scratch my head. And, I was worried for a second that Luka would have to leave after a couple of years in Dallas. That still obviously could potentially still be on the table.
Of course.
But the fact that Dallas has already made efforts to make him better and make the roster better, encouraging.
I mean, he's averaging a career high in points, 34.5 points a game. He's averaging his career best 3-point percentage at 38%. He's averaging his career near his career best in field goal percentage, career best in effective field goal percentage. He's the most efficient he's ever been. He has almost 10 assists a game with less than 4 turnovers. Like, does just about everything you need, that type of guy to do. And again, Daniel Gafford being there and not having to rely on Derek Lively as your starting center in the playoffs. The fact that you have Derek Lively as a backup in all the different situations. And then, I just really like the roster for playoff basketball, especially with Luka. Like, they're way more interesting now. So I'm excited for that. I still am thrilled to see what the Oklahoma City Thunder can do when they get to the playoffs, because Troy, at this point, for at least their first series or 2, they're going to have home court advantage.
Yeah.
And granted, they could be playing Luka. They could be playing like Steph and the Warriors. They could be playing LeBron James and the Lakers. They could get a really tough draw. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing the level that he's playing.
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren being the guy that he's been already. And if you can get Gordon Hayward back to just 70%.
Yeah, you got a good team.
You have a legitimate shot at a conference finals appearance.
Yeah. This so early on in their rebuild. I mean, but Shai, I don't think the Thunder even knew what they were getting in SG. I don't think the league knew what they were getting in him. He's really the catalyst of all of this. But yes, you're right. Not only have they gotten the star players with I guess I would call Chet a rising star with
I'd call Chet I feel comfortable saying Chet's a star.
Okay.
I feel comfortable going there.
But like, to your point, you got role players now to play alongside of this. Again, this early in their careers. Man, Cone's got to be a lucky guy. Shout out to Cone.
Yep. We got to have Cone back on the pod soon. Definitely, especially with this playoff run they're about to go on. But,
yeah.
I mean, you look at Sam Presti, and I know he's gotten a lot of criticism because the Thunder have only had the 1 finals appearance. They didn't close the job. They weren't able to get it done with, and they were like, people said they're never going to have a big 3 like Durant, Westbrook, and Harden again. In Troy, almost 10 years after that big 3 broke up,
They got a big
Here
three.
we are.
Yeah.
With the Oklahoma City having a new big three in Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
that and this could, I'm going to preface this with, this sounds blasphemous on the surface. But Troy, if you put some thought to it, there's a legitimate case to be made that this big three could be better than the big
Blasphemy.
three. I know. I get it.
Yeah. No, I see where you're coming from, but there's so much time that has to be
1000%.
yeah,
like I said,
yeah.
I'm not saying it is,
Right.
but I'm saying you could make the case that they could be. They have the potential.
Could.
All three guys are MVP level, like MVP type talents in their
Williams
own right.
even too? You think Williams?
Yes.
I think he's all-star, but MVP?
He is a all. Listen, I'm not saying he's going to win an MVP, but I think he's the type. I think he's very reminiscent to a James Harden, where he is amazing in his role in Oklahoma City, and he's doing incredible things there. If you traded him to another team, you could legitimately build around him as your number one guy, and I think you could eventually make legitimate noise. He's he could be an all defensive player right now. His 3-point shot's phenomenal. His handle's great. Like he is phenomenal. Like on both sides of the 40% 3-point shooter, averaging almost 20 points a game this year. Scratch that, my bad. 45% 3-point shooter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he makes a lot of big plays in big moments. Talk about one of the most underrated players in the league. Like J-Dub's like really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's only in his second year. Chet, only in his first year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what, only 25?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have all the picks. And they like,
right.
What else can you say?
About. Lot to be excited about.
Yep. And if you're a fan of other teams in the West, a lot to be scared about. A lot to be scared about. A team that's not going to feel too scared, though, Troy, the San Antonio Spurs. We just got to talk about Wemby and the run that he's been on.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Kevin O'Connor tweet the other day that you can make the legitimate case that Victor Wembanyama is the best defensive player in the league right now. And the fact that that's a conversation in his rookie year.
Tell me another player who's getting 10 blocks. He got 10 blocks a few games ago.
He got a triple-double with blocks, Troy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Sean, he's the future of the league, and that's good. I'm glad because he is a good guy that you want as the face of the league, right? He's fun to watch. Yeah, Spurs have a lot to do. Yeah, they have a lot of pieces to still figure out, but they sure know one piece that's going to be there. It's him, obviously.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say, Sean. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a rookie this good. Is he the best rookie in our life? He's a better rookie than LeBron James.
In our lifetime, he's the best rookie, hands down.
Right.
And you know, we just talked about Chet and how awesome he's been, and you know, any other season, he would be the rookie of the year, and it wouldn't even be a question.
Mm-hmm.
Even with how bad the Spurs are, that dude's just too good. You just can't not give it to him. And if I'm the Spurs, I do not wait on starting to try to compete. Next year, put a competitive roster around this guy and do it now because he is ready. Like without a doubt, if he is healthy, he is ready, and he is only gotten better as time has gone on. And I get that people were sick of the hype. I get that people were weary because he was from overseas. They had to see him do it in the league. What else do you need to see now?
Right.
Legitimate question.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What's the first move you can do this summer though with the Spurs roster you have now? You have Jeremy Shohan, and you got
Sohan, you got you got some decent players. Yeah, you got Keldon Johnson.
So,
You have Devin Vassell. You got Trey Jones. You got Zach Collins. You got some decent guys. If I'm them, I know there's reports that they were potentially talking to Atlanta about DeJounte Murray at the deadline and potentially getting him back. I wouldn't hate that at all. Go get a legitimate guard that can play in the pick and roll with him. That alone gets you 7 more wins, in my opinion. On top of
yeah,
that, you can with the amount of assets they have, they're going to have a top draft pick this year. You could
yeah,
potentially leverage that into getting another type of player as well. Greg Popovich is in San Antonio, they're great at scouting and developing players as well. So you gotta, you would imagine that Jeremy Sohan in year 3 is ready to take some sort of leap. And if you put him in his natural role, not playing point guard, I'd imagine he'd be playing a lot better. So, and I mean, again, as long as you have Pop, that they're going, especially as Wemby goes on, if he's healthy, they're only going to go this direction. It's not a question.
Right. Yeah. Excited time to be in Spurs land in San Antonio, but
and I mean, and it just speaks to, again, Jokic is still a fairly young guy. He still has plenty of time.
So much time.
They're just any
you can't even call this his prime. You can't call Jokic's prime today.
Yeah, isn't that scary? By the way, and really, the only limit to Jokic, playing, he's 29, and the way that he plays, granted, big men tend to decline around 30. His game's not overly predicated on his athleticism. So if he wanted to play until he was 38, he could. I don't think he's going to play another 10 years. Just going out on a limb, I could legitimately, just because of his personality, his vibes, I could see him at 31 going, you know what? I've gotten my money. I've gotten my rings. I can go hang out with my horses and just be secluded. And I'm one of the best big men ever right now.
Case. But
I hope that's not the case. But knowing Jokic, telling me that's not possible.
It's possible. It is
100%. But he can play as long as he wants. You still have Devin Booker in Phoenix. You still have Anthony Davis with plenty of years left as well. You have Zion Williamson in New Orleans and what they're building. Just because you have that type of dominant talent coming into the league does not mean by any means that it's just going to be an automatic title for Wemby every single year. And it's not like he's just going to have this automatic road to the finals. This league is as competitive as it's ever been. And even with that type of guy coming in, that's still the case today.
That's right. That's absolutely right, Sean.
So really excited to, just to see all that, just how the rest of his season unfolds. Again, just hope that he can continue to be healthy. There's a lot of really good basketball to be played. Troy, one last thing we got to do before the podcast closes. There's some new branding that we have to look at. The Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah, put it on the screen, buddy. Put it on the screen.
Putting it up right now. So, as the Clippers are moving into their new arena next year, and with that, they've been working on new branding and new uniforms to go with it. And so, the Los Angeles Clippers unveiled these 3 new jerseys, going back to their much more classic, cursive font. I still wish maybe there was some outlining on here, some white outlining on these, so that the letters are a little bit more prominent. But the logo is kind of the thing that's being criticized the most. I personally don't hate it, but overall, Troy, first impressions, what do you think of the new Clippers branding?
Yeah, so I just love the logo from 2009. So I'm always going to be biased to that. But I don't know if you saw this, Sean, or this is where you're going with it. The minor league soccer team in Columbus, Ohio, the Columbus Crew, their logo is near identical to the Clippers' new logo.
Is it really?
You'll have to check that out. There's a side by side. It's a little bit plagiarized. I will admit. So that was my first. My wife was kind of mad about that one.
Steve Ballmer can just open up the paycheck, the checkbook. It's all good.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's just kind of basic for me, to be totally honest with you, Sean. But you got red, white, and blue. Great.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to their classic look of the cursive on the jersey. I get people like that logo, but Again, the reason why you'll never see that logo again, 2 words, Donald Sterling.
Right. Yeah. And
So,
rightfully so.
yeah. So, like, you just have to move away from that image forever, and I like the nod to San Diego because they were robbed of the Clippers. So I like the nod to that. I like I like that they just didn't play it safe. Maybe they did by copying that logo. We don't know, but assuming they didn't and they have good intent, I actually like these. Also, it's definitely, I think we can all agree it's a hell of a lot better than the logo they've had for the last few years
Yeah.
in the uniforms they had. It's all
Right.
love to Steve Ballmer, but that first rebrand did not go well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Exciting things.
not love. Yeah, Steve Ballmer. I thought I said all love to Donald Sterling, and I was like, no, no, no.
I was gonna say, exciting core you have in Los Angeles, exciting future with the new stadium and then the colors. But my goodness, this year's playoffs is going to be very important for this Clippers organization.
Oh, it's going to be everything. I mean, the fact that you already got Kawhi to extend is huge. The fact that you have James Harden talking about how he wants to stay and continue to play there, and by the way, the seamless fit. Like, like I was very vocally against this move at the beginning. I'm not one of those people that's ashamed to say I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong about this because
Mhm.
this has been some awesome basketball. And
Yeah.
I mean, if these guys, if all three of these guys are healthy, Troy, even with how stacked the West is right now,
Right.
there is no reason this team couldn't be a finals team. Dare I say it, a champion team if they stay healthy and the stars align.
Right. I mean, how aren't you though with James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George on your roster? So to me, it's kind of stating the obvious, but in Clippers history and their
I mean,
management,
it it is, but it's not necessarily though in today's NBA. I mean, it's been a couple
right.
years since we've seen Kawhi at this level,
Yeah,
especially with
yeah,
all
it
the
is.
injuries
You're
he's
right.
dealt with.
You're
Paul
right.
George is getting older. James Harden was, we were talking about him potentially playing in China in the next couple of years.
Yeah,
We are
yeah.
talking about this being his last chance in the
Mhm.
NBA. Like this wasn't a like signed, sealed, delivered hit at the beginning. They
No,
lost five
no, no.
straight.
That's not what I meant. But the core,
I
the
know,
roster. Right, right.
I know. But like on paper, this should be a contender. But with the journey they've gone through, the stuff that's been stacked against them, all the reasons that this should not have worked, it's great to see that it is.
Yeah, you're right.
And and unlike the big three in Brooklyn, I'm glad we were able to see these guys play together for more than 13 games.
My goodness, I forget that era of NBA history happened.
By the way, that big three, how big those moves were, how consequential we thought that was going to be for like the league. There were legitimately more news segments and podcast episodes talking about those guys playing together than there were actual minutes on the court.
That's crazy. Yeah, crazy shot.
So 100%. You know what else is crazy, Troy? Not being subscribed to From Half Court, where each and every week we break down all things NBA basketball, all things Pistons basketball. If you like that, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. But again, be sure to follow Troy on X at Troy3044. Go subscribe to Crunch Time and follow Jeff on X as well. And thank you all for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.